Thank you and welcome back for the second half of tonight's Meet Your Candidate Forum. I'm Lisa Bailey from the League of Women Voters Red Wing, and I'd like to ask everyone to join me in welcoming the candidates for Senate 20, Steve Drazkowski and Brad Drankon, candidates for House 20A, Roger Kittleson, Pam Altendorf, and Laurel Stinson, sorry. I won't go over all the rules again. I'm just going to state the conditions of the questioning. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement and 60 seconds to respond to each question I ask. Candidates will also have 60 seconds for a closing statement and 30 seconds for rebuttal statements should they choose to make one. As I noted earlier, we'll be rotating who goes first, and I'll be doing my best with my colleagues here to keep track. So if I do something wrong, I'm sure they'll let me know. I would now invite the candidates to give their opening statements in the following order. Steve Drazkowski, followed by Brad Drankon. And then after that, I'll go into who's going to go next.
Hi everybody, Steve Drazkowski. I live at Mazeppa. Thanks for having me here tonight. Thanks for being out with a beautiful night. I grew up on a family farm right across the river from Winona, Minnesota. 5 boys in the family. That's where we learned the values of hard work, honesty, common sense, and personal responsibility. And those are the things that really, the values that guide my work in the Minnesota House of Representatives and have for the last 15 years. I live with my wife Laura in Mazeppa. We have 1 daughter, Kinsey, and a granddaughter now. I guess I'm getting old, but I tell you what, my passion for freedom has not diminished. And I can tell you this much, over the last 2 years, we have seen unprecedented behavior about our government here in the state of Minnesota. We have a governor that actually locked us in our basements, or attempted to, for 2 weeks, closed businesses, told kids that they couldn't go to school for prolonged periods of time, forced them to be in masks and run around in the gym with masks on when we knew there wasn't any danger to them. The behavior we have seen and the loss of freedom in this state is palpable out there with the people of Minnesota. My effort, and the reason I'm running for the Minnesota Senate, is to make sure we undo the things in Chapter 12 that allowed this governor to do what he did. That we go and we fix education so that citizens can have their choice of education and kids can learn again. Thank you.
Before we proceed, I just remind everyone, please hold your applause until the very end of tonight's proceedings. And before Mr. Drankon proceeds, I'm going to ask the candidates, please sit down. It's going to be, we'll be here for a while. Go ahead, Brad.
Well, thank you to the League of Minnesota Voters for having, or League of Women Voters tonight for having us, and for all of you for being here. My name is Brad Drankon. I'm from Zumbrota, born in Zumbrota. My dad, Kenny's from Goodhue. My mom, Mark, from Zumbrota. They grew up on family farms there, and I spent a lot of time on both of those farms growing up. When we moved to Zumbrota, when I was like 5, went to school there and graduated and got drug into the park board. And like every other small town, it's easy to serve a town you love. And by the time I was done, I'd been on the council for 6 years, the mayor for 4. And at that time, I had 13 years of public service into the city of Zumbrota. I'd spent a quarter of my life serving the town. It's no secret that our council was pretty conservative. We tried to keep debt and taxes low. We supported our cops. We got the Zumbrota Police Department to 24/7 coverage. Got an SRO at the school. When I retired, I didn't run again in 2020 because I kind of believe in term limits. I thought somebody else could do it just as good a job as I did. But I am also the proud father of 3 daughters. And during these last 2 years, what's happened at the federal and state level has driven me to run to try to go to St. Paul to protect their rights. It's important to me that they have a voice in St. Paul that will defend them, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do, and it's why I'm running. So thank you very much.
Again, please withhold your applause until the very end. I'm next going to ask Laurel Stinson, followed by Pam Altendorf and Roger Kittleson.
Hi everyone, I'm Laurel Stinson. I was born right here in Red Wing and raised on Apple Orchard in Florence Township in between Red Wing and Lake City. I'm a graduate of Lake City Public Schools, and growing up my dad worked the night shift in a factory in Lake City while also running our family's orchard during the day. And that's my example of hard work and how it takes that to succeed and to support our families and our communities. I went to college in Madison, Wisconsin and got a theater degree. I'm trained as a singer and an actor and a stunt performer, and spent the first part of my career in stage and event management. I've been lucky enough to travel all over the United States and Canada, working in theaters and experiencing cultures from around the country and learning from them. I moved back to Red Wing 10 years ago, and since then I worked in a lot of different jobs. I've been a baker, I've been a landscaper, I worked at the nuclear plant. I've been a nonprofit leader, most recently for the Hunger Prevention Council of Pierce County, where I learned a lot about the struggles that people in our area are facing. 4 years ago, I ran for the Red Wing City Council and was elected, and at that time, none of us could have known that we'd be facing the particular struggles that we have over the last 3 years brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. But I've been working hard alongside my fellow council members to lead our community and build relationships, and I intend to continue that in my run for the Minnesota House. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Pam Altendorf and I'm the Republican nominee. I am from rural Red Wing. We've been here for 17 years. I grew up on a poultry farm. My husband grew up on a dairy farm, and that's where I attribute my work ethic to. I have been very active in our community the last year and a half, and also as a business for the last 14 years. I have a large sales business that spreads across America, United States. I have over 15,000 team members on my downline team. I built that business out of hard work, sweat, late nights, putting in 12 to 16-hour days. And you can say when I'm passionate about something, I give it my all and I fight hard for that. When I heard this position was opening up in January, I knew that I had the skills because of my professional business that I could run for this. And I wanted to be a true voice for the people. I wanted to represent this district and be a voice of common sense, bringing transparency and accountability back to our district, back to our area, back to the state of Minnesota. As we have seen in the last few years, our freedoms are at stake, and I want to be a true representative, a true voice for the people of this district. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Barb Haley and Senator Mike Goggin for representing this last 6 years. And I've had a question they've been able to respond quite honestly, promptly. If I get this job, I'm going to do the same. And I want to tell you a little bit about my background. Your county attorney's from a family of 15. I'm from a family of 14, and I'm number 13, which is my favorite number. Anyway, but I appreciate you being here, but I want to let you know my background has really been pushed by my father and mother's attitude about education. They told me, go to college, get a career, do better. And that's what I've done. And I'm helping out in the preschools and the grade schools and the high schools, and the teachers that are here know that. I've been doing that for 5 years in what I call my fake retirement job. I also have a business, Kittleson Creamery, where I buy and sell dairy ingredients domestically and internationally. Been doing that for 30 plus years. And I want to make a statement about why I'm running as an independent. The slogan, "We need more independence," that didn't come from me. That came from the 600 individuals that signed my petition in 5 days because they're kind of tired of the fighting that's going on. So my resume and the things I support are on the back table. It's on this little 3x5 pocket card. So if you get a chance, pick it up, and I'll do my best if you hire me for the job. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read the well, first I'm going to announce who goes next, and we're going to go in the same order, but we'll start with a different person first. So we'll start with Brad Dracon, followed by Laurel Stinson, and then Pam, Roger, and Steve. Question number 1. There's currently a budget surplus, according to the Minnesota Department of Revenue. What ideas do you have for making best use of this surplus?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, 9.8 billion. They're saying they left on the table. Democrat plan was $4 billion for health care and Walls checks. The Republican plan was for tax breaks. I think a nonpartisan group decided that they'd primarily benefit the wealthy, but either way, they walked away from it. They decided not to decide what to do with that money. That's something that as a mayor you don't get to do. You don't get to have not a budget. You can't walk away from setting the city's budget and deciding where the money's going to go and fixing those problems. So at the state level, that's the kind of attitude that I like to think I bring to this job where you have to work together to get along with people, whether you agree with them or not, to get the work done that you went up there to do. I'm sure there's a compromise in there somewhere between what the Republicans and the Democrats wanted. It just was going to take some conversation and working together to get it done. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, I will echo everything that Brad just said, but also add that I would intend to reinvest some of that money in some of the unfunded mandates that are in our government right now. Cities and school districts are facing challenges, things like special education and local ambulance services, things like that, where there are rules that they have to implement, but no funding has been provided to implement those rules that have come from the state. And we need to fix that. If the state is going to mandate something, then we need to provide the funding to make sure that our local communities can fulfill those obligations. That's how we can make sure that property taxes don't go up, and how we can keep everything transparent and fiscally responsible.
Thank you for that question. This is very important, and in fact, I just got the numbers this morning. We ended the last with $9 billion surplus. $1 billion of that was spent. We have now added to that another $3 billion. So that's $11 billion. And that's why this election cycle is so important for you to be out there voting on this one issue. The Democrats have a history of tax and spend, tax and spend. Our budget has increased year after year. Does anyone remember it going down? If we spend that surplus, that is only going to increase the base of our budget, our revenue budget, and we cannot afford that. That at this point would almost be a 20% increase. So this year, we have to look at true tax reform. We have to look at getting those tax dollars back to the people that paid it in. And when I say tax reform, we have to look at why in Minnesota are we one of the highest tax states. We are number 3 in corporation tax. And this is a real tragedy because we are forcing good businesses and corporations out of our state.
Thank you. Whether it's 11 billion or 9 billion, that's a good thing. But I'm going to tell you a story which is true. The last 6 weeks I've been door knocking. I was down in Wabasha and found out that the group homes are in their reserves. Nursing homes are closing as we speak here in Goodhue County. Group homes are struggling. PROAC is struggling, and no one is doing anything about it in the Democratic or Republican side of this state. I'd have a special session and I would take care of the need for our disabled and our elderly, and I'd do it today. Seriously, that's what I would do with our surplus today. Additionally, I believe we need a 4-year-old preschool program for every child in the state of Minnesota, because it's, quite honestly, anybody that's in education knows it's the best investment we could make is in our education. Thank you.
Well, to begin with, if you, the voters, send any of these 3 Democrats up here to St. Paul and the Democrats control the House and the Senate, there won't be any tax cuts. Because we have a situation here in Minnesota, the Democrats control state government right now. And you haven't seen tax cuts because of that. We have a government that has grown unbelievably, relentlessly, 10% increase just the last biennium. Our budget, you guys, is fully set. It was set back during session. It's set now until June 30th of next year. Fully funded. What we need to do is go back and cut taxes. As Pam mentioned, $11 or $11.5 billion over collection of the hardworking people of Minnesota. Their tax money has been taken from them. We can cut the senior citizen income tax or get rid of it. We can get rid of the estate tax. We can get rid of the sick tax. We can get rid of the state general tax on businesses and still significantly cut income taxes in our state.
Thank you. The next question will start with Laurel, followed by Pam, Roger, Steve, and Brad. As you've been campaigning, what issues of concern have you heard from Goodhue County farmers? As a part of your response, what will you do to financially support beginning farmers?
Thank you for that question. Farmers who I've been talking to, mostly in rural Wabasha County, in addition to the issues that all people have been bringing up with me, are really concerned about the right to repair. They want to be able to repair their own equipment. And also, they've expressed concern to me about cottage licensing laws and the difficulty that there is in making food in your home to sell at farmers markets and scaling that up to be a profitable business and the limits that are placed on that. So I'd like to take a look at those cottage licensing laws and see what we can do to streamline that process, make things easier for our farmers and our farm families to make a living off of their farms, because that's how we can support them and our whole state economy, is by making it easier for everyone to start the businesses they want to start and to learn new skills and to thrive in this economy.
I'm glad you asked a question about agriculture right here in this district. Agriculture is really, it's so important here. As a state, over $16 billion goes into the agriculture production of the state. Minnesota ranks in the top 5 highest state in agricultural production, and so we have to protect agriculture in the state. When I'm out there talking to farmers, which I have been for the last several months, I hear over and over again that the government is stifling them, that some operations, they even have to hire someone just to deal with the red tape, the mandates, the regulations that they're required to do, the paperwork. Farmers are good stewards of land. They love their land. They want this to be available to the next generation. And that's another thing, is we have to start looking at, again, cutting the taxes. The inheritance tax here in Minnesota is 16%, which is very detrimental to the next family generation taking over that family farm.
I don't disagree with Pam or Laurel at all. And I want to just say something, because I'm 65 years old and I've been in agriculture, livestock production, and marketing my whole life. Farmers have kind of done it to themselves. Why in the world would you pay more than $3,000 an acre for farmland? We kind of said to the next generation, we're going to buy more for you, but you're not going to be able to pay for it. And so I'm kind of frustrated when I continue to go to land auctions, and my friends know I love auctions. Who doesn't? And the land prices are ridiculously high. The farmers got to step back and say, we got to be responsible. And I know the farmers are responsible for their lands. I see it. I see it every day. Livestock production, taking that manure back out in the farm and reusing it for fertilizer, it's a great thing to see. I love being in the rural area, and I've been in the rural area most of my life, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And as an independent, I'm going to do my best to help farmers, but I'm not going to encourage buying land at $9,000 an acre. Thank you.
I grew up on a family farm. I went to school for agriculture. I've got a master's degree in agriculture education and a bachelor's degree in agriculture from the University of Wisconsin River Falls. I was a county extension agent for 15 years, so I know farms well. I've been on hundreds of farms throughout our district. And I can tell you, farmers don't want to be welfare recipients. They want to work hard, earn their keep, and build for their family and their future generations. What they invest in their farm and their land is their retirement program. So what do we do? The question is, what do we do? We've got a beginning farmer program. Do we really need it? You know, I don't think so. I think what we really need to do is we need to lower property taxes for our farmers. And I was the author when I was chair of the property tax committee that started that. We need to finish it off so that farmers are put on a level playing field with their city cousins. Next, we need to remove the teeth out of the DNR and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency that continually stifle our farm production. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. When I visited the O'Reilly farm for breakfast on the farm earlier this year, I talked to a representative from Organic Valley, the milk producers that have farms in 35 states. And I asked them, what do you think would help farmers at the state level or any level for a guy like me that's looking to help them out? And without question, didn't even bat an eye, he said healthcare. There's too many people that have a spouse working off the farm because they can't afford healthcare. The Farmers Union has a proposal where farmers could buy into Minnesota Care and perhaps even raise the lowest standard of the income for them to be able to do that. There are ways to get health care to small family farms and small businesses, and we got to find a way to do them. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to have a couple of questions regarding education. And we'll start with Pam, followed by Roger, Steve, Brad, and Laurel. What changes might you propose to the current laws regarding funding of Minnesota's preschool through grade 12 public school systems?
Thank you. Our education is very important to everyone. In fact, in Minnesota, it's so important to us that 40% of our tax dollars is going towards education. And so we're all on the same page, right? We want to support our kids, but we need someone that's going to look at facts and not be led by emotion. Right now in Red Wing School, the proficiency back in 2018 was between 56% math, I believe. Sorry, I might have them wrong. Around 56 to 53% for math proficiency, reading, and science. In the last 4 years now since COVID, those numbers unfortunately have dropped significantly up to another 16 to 21%. And so we have to take a strong look at education. That's why I was supporting the Minnesota Education Freedom Act and looking at having our tax dollars follow the students, providing competition in our schools.
Funding education, correct, Lisa? K through 12, right? Alrighty. You get your property tax statement, you know where your money's going, right? Does anybody feel that your public schools are underfunded? Some would say yes, some would say no. I've been in the schools on a full-time and part-time basis for the last 5 years, and I can tell you, in my opinion, some schools are underfunded. And the reason they're underfunded is some of the students are coming in and they're what we call low-level students that need extra help. I visited our school right out here, Sunnyside as well as Burnside, and they've got about 20 to 25% of the kids that have what we call IEPs, individual evaluation programs, and they need extra help to advance them. The key to a good economy is a good education system, and that means you got to pay for it, whether it's property tax, sales tax, income tax, or gambling. You got to pay for it. And really, that's where you guys come in. As an independent, I think income tax is better. But you've got to tell me at the end of the day what's best. But I feel schools are underfunded with the kind of students that we're seeing today. Thank you.
So back during the pandemic, we have evidence that the Walz administration, the Commissioner of Education, was meeting regularly with the Government Teachers Union Board at the state level and getting direction on how to carry out education policy in the state of Minnesota. Very, very clear. We have a school system, a public school system that is controlled by people and their agenda. And we saw during the pandemic, they kicked the kids out. They knew throughout the pandemic, even a year into it, that learning loss was happening significantly. Pam mentioned it. We've been having learning loss over the long term, slowly going down, and now it just went boom. Went from 56 or 55% in Red Wing here, down near 40% proficiency in reading. That's unacceptable. We have to have the money follow the kid, get competition into the school place, and have public schools and private schools and home schools all become stronger.
Thank you for the question. Early childhood education keeps kids from repeating classes. It keeps them from being labeled. It gets them graduated, and when they graduate, they're able to get better paying jobs. For the record, I'm for early childhood education, and for the record, I'm also against public funding for private schools. Thank you.
I do believe that our schools are currently underfunded. I believe they've been consistently underfunded for a long time. And the evidence for that is that our paraprofessionals who work in our public schools are not paid a living wage. They need to be paid enough to live on their one job. They do such important work for our schools, and they need to be paid fairly. And the only way that we can get to a place where all of the professionals who support our students' mental health and their special education needs, as well as their teachers, is to properly fund our public schools. And that is why I support our public schools. They are the base of our economy, and we need to make them as strong as we can. No one can succeed and thrive in Minnesota and build businesses and learn new skills without a strong education, and especially in rural areas, that comes from public schools, and they need our support.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Roger, Steve, Brad, Laurel, and finally Pam. Do you support spending taxpayer dollars for private and/or religious schools? Why or why not?
Thanks for the question. I kind of expected this question. My significant other and I, and she's just walking down the sidewalk now, we sent our kids to parochial schools back in the 80s and early 90s. In fact, that's where I met her and her husband, who passed away 10 years ago. And I worked a second job to pay for my children to go to a parochial school, a Catholic school. And so did her husband, John. You have choice. Everybody has choice. But if you're not willing to step forward and take a second job and pay for it, then you've got to support. I shouldn't say you don't have to support, but you should support a public school. Do I support public vouchers? We talked about this 30 years ago at the legislature. You go ahead and put public monies into private schools, your taxes will go up because we've got 133 school districts, I think, and they cannot survive without money. Money makes the world go around, and that includes education. Thank you.
The proposal that Pam and I wrote to have the money follow the kid does not provide that the government sends money to the private school or to the home school. It reimburses the parents. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to do something different. This protecting the status quo by the Government Teachers Union in the state of Minnesota is failing our kids. Go to Minneapolis and St. Paul where the graduation rate's 50%. Here we enjoy 90%, 95%, some schools 96, 98% graduation rate. Minneapolis North, the graduation rate is 33%. It's the poor families in Minnesota that our proposal will help. It's the poor people who can't afford another option. They're locked in by the control of the teachers union, the Democrats in this state. Help us liberate those people who can't send their kids to different schools and get them the quality education they're being deprived here in the state of Minnesota.
Thanks for the question. I think I already answered it, but I'll take this second to apologize formally to Mrs. Helgerson, my speech teacher in 10th grade. I had no idea. So that education works for all of us, and if we don't fund it, I think it's only going to, like Roger says, it's the most important thing we can do for our kids. There's, you know, I've said I've already answered the question. I'm having trouble making something up, so forgive me.
Okay, I like to look at facts, and as we already said, 40% of our Minnesota budget is going towards education. That's a fact. We are having proposals of going to mandatory or fully funded preschool. Do you know what that would cost the taxpayers? That would continue to increase our budget. And when is enough enough? Also, if we have a business, so I'm a business person, we have small business, and I've ran a large sales corporation. Would you continue to put money towards something that has a 50% failure rate? The answer is absolutely not. You need to elect people that are willing to take on the big issues, that's willing to stand up to the teachers union. Do not get emotional on this subject. This is not about not funding the schools. This is not about your children and being properly educated. This is us turning all of the attention to the children and providing them the highest quality of education possible.
I do not support public funding for private schools for a few different reasons. One is that I don't believe that it would result in more choice in rural areas in this district, like this district. The mechanics for what would make a school profitable, that would result in more schools opening, I just don't think that that is realistic for a rural area like this one. And also, Minnesota is ranked highly in our public school system. I want to say we're the third highest state in public education. So we're doing a good job. We can do better. We definitely can, but there's no reason to think that we're failing our students, at least not most of them. And public schools are the heart of rural communities. It isn't just about the education that our students get in our public schools, it's also the communities that are built around those schools, and the sports teams and the choir concerts and the school plays and all of the relationships that are built there. And that's why I support our public schools.
Thank you. This next question will be back to the start. Steve, Brad, Laurel, Pam, and then Roger. What should be the legislature's role, if any, in determining school curriculum and what is taught in classrooms throughout the state?
Well, they're going through a process right now where PELSB, the Public Education Licensing Board here in the state of Minnesota, with all of its membership appointed by Governor Walz, they're redoing the licensing standards and incorporating liberal doctrine into it. They're bringing an agenda to our public schools that's a political agenda. It's a political agenda that teaches kids that America's not a great country. It's an agenda that teaches kids that if you're of one color, you're an oppressor. If you're of another color, you're a victim. It divides us. That's what we have going on in this state. We need new leadership and a new direction. We Republicans are begging you people out here that are going to get a chance to vote to do the right thing for the kids of this state.
Thank you for the question. You know, sometimes when you're up here answering questions, there comes one that you're really not that familiar on, and when that happens, you gotta find out more about what's going on. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on everything, I'm not sure what role the state legislation is trying to take in curriculum, but at first blush, I don't think anybody likes the thought of that. I think that people want to trust teachers and educators to form their own curriculums, proven curriculums that teach kids how to do things like read, write, and perhaps even be better at public speaking. Those kind of things matter, and you hope that teachers and the people that we put in charge of our kids have the good sense to do that without interference. So while I'm not necessarily agreeing with the representative's tone, the gist is that there is common ground here that we can find. We just have to not make enemies of the people we're trying to serve. I'm sure there's plenty of teachers out there that are trying to do the right thing, and those are the people that I want to support. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that our teachers are highly trained professionals, and we hire them to work in our public schools because of that. They've proven that they can write curriculum and teach the facts, and I think that's what's important. We need to support our teachers in teaching the truth. And I don't think that they need to be micromanaged or to have a lot of interference from the likes of me.
One great thing that I've seen in this election cycle is a lot of people are getting involved locally at the school board levels. So I'm not advocating that the state legislature gets involved with this, but what we need is transparency in our school systems. We should have curriculum visible for parents to see. We also should not be pushing teachers to educate on things that they do not want to be educating with. I'm going to go back to the numbers, everyone. The facts are Red Wing is very low in proficiency in science, reading, math. And so I do support the public school system. I do support our kids. But we cannot stand up here and continue to be blind to what is happening to our kids. We have to put the kids first, and we have to provide this transparency in our curriculum to the parents. And when I'm out door knocking, the teachers do not like to be beholden to the teachers union. They want a voice, and they don't want to be teaching curriculum that does not go along with their beliefs. Math, reading, science, let's go back to the core.
Remind everyone, please, to refrain from applause until the very end. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm the only active teacher standing on the stage, and I've been doing it for a little over 5 years. I've also been on a school board for 8 years, and I've been on ad hoc committees hiring teachers, superintendents, and principals. I'm a single father of 4 adult children, and I raised them myself. And anybody that has been actively involved like I have with my children, you know the education starts at home. You know you got to help the kids with their reading. You know you got to help them with their math. And if you don't, the kids are going to fall behind. That's where I think, like I said, this new crop of students, I think the parents are failing, some of our students. And when they fail, teachers fail, the school board fails, everything looks bad. So I'm saying in front of everybody with a 15-second warner, parents need to step it up. Parents need to step up and work with their kids at home with the assignments that are sent home by their teachers. Thank you.
Okay, for this next one, we're going to start with Brad, then Laurel, Pam, Roger, and Steve. Given the recent Supreme Court ruling regarding Roe versus Wade, state legislatures may be enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health?
Thank you for the question. When I spoke at the convention in Goodhue, I told the people there that the 5 most important people in my life are women. My mother, my wife of 25 years who's with me tonight, and our 3 beautiful daughters. And they firmly believe they don't want a Republican representing them. They want someone in St. Paul who's going to go up there and fight for their rights as women. And that's the reason why I'm doing this. Minnesota's had a constitutional privilege for the women to get an abortion since '95. I would make sure that that stays in place. We can find common ground. Nobody wants unwanted pregnancies. Nobody likes the thought of having an abortion. But when we talk about it, I respect the rights of my daughters to choose. And that's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. As I've been campaigning and door knocking, the #1 issue that people talk to me about is this issue. And it is very important to the people who talk to me that women continue to have their rights. Women's rights are a top priority for the voters who I have been talking to. Healthcare is a right, and I intend to continue to support that. I think that there is no reason for us to make any change to the way that we have those rights now.
So I've been out door knocking too, and the people I'm talking to, they're concerned about the economy, crime, education. I want to bring the facts on this issue, again, about the abortion debate. With the Roe versus Wade being overturned, unfortunately, we are seeing a manipulation, a falsehood being spread across commercial after commercial. So right here in the state of Minnesota, you have the right to have an abortion. With the overturning of Roe versus Wade, that did not change. You have the right to have an abortion. And going into this election cycle, they are running false ads, trying to make you believe by fear tactics and fear mongering that the governor coming in or any state legislator coming into this new election in November could overturn our constitutional right here in Minnesota. Guess what? You are being controlled and manipulated, and it's time to call it out. Because the only way in Minnesota we are switching your right to have an abortion is to actually have a constitutional amendment. And that means you, the voters, go to the polls and vote. So I would like you to stop this fear mongering.
It's no secret. I've never been in support of an abortion unless it's for health purposes to save the life of a mother. When Roe versus Wade was passed, I was 17, 18 years old, and I lost all my rights as a father, as a man. I could not protect my unborn children. And I've seen father after father, men that are married that have children whose wives decided they're going to have an abortion now the second, third, or fourth child for the last 50 years. I don't support abortion unless it's for the safety of the mother. That's it. And I also want to say, Minnesota's behind when it comes to equal rights for fathers. Wisconsin passed a law in 1999, when a father and mother gets divorced, they get equal placement. Minnesota still doesn't have that law. And that's why I got to know Barb Haley so much, because she was pushing for fathers and children to have equal rights, and I'm going to do the same thing. Thank you very much.
So I've got a 100% pro-life voting record in my history in the Minnesota House. I don't expect it's going to change. What Pam pointed out here is very true. People in Minnesota are getting played by the Democrats on this issue. The reality is there's a state constitution that's being interpreted by the state Supreme Court that says the same thing that Roe versus Wade said on the state level. Nothing's going to change here, regardless of who you elect, Republicans or Democrats. The only way to change it is to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, a proposal, and let the people make the choice. Now, I don't believe that abortion is health care. I believe it is a conscious choice to kill a life. Our Constitution protects the ability for people's lives. That means the young women and men that have yet to be born.
Doing a 30-second rebuttal.
Thank you. I would just like to point out that today, Lindsey Graham said that if they take office and get control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, there's going to be a nationwide ban on abortion. So our constitutional rights as a state would be superseded, and pointing that out. Thank you.
Okay, for the next one, we will keep going, and Laurel will start, followed by Pam, Roger, Steve, and Brad. As a member of the legislature, what measures, if any, would you support to reinforce or ensure voter confidence in our elections?
As some of you may have known, our Secretary of State, Steve Simon, visited Red Wing just a few days ago, the last couple weeks, and our elections in Minnesota are secure. There is no reason to fear that there is fraudulent voting or anything like that going on. There are many systems in place to prevent that from happening. I personally have met and spoken to a lot of election judges, and I have every confidence that our election system is secure and that there is no reason to fear on that line of reasoning.
After the 2020 election, we did have quite a lot of people that were questioning if it was a fair election. So here's what I say. This is a nonpartisan issue, really, is we want to make sure we have fair elections. We should make it easy to vote. We should make it hard to cheat. I would have a question for all of you, and that is why in the past when we had paper ballots, did we know the winner of elections within a day? Why now, with all of the technology and the electronic machines and everything that we have in place today, we are sometimes not finding out winners of races for days and weeks? We have to make sure that we are doing things like voter ID. That is something that's easy to do. Paper ballots. We do have a problem in our society when we have a high percentage of people that are not feeling confident in our election process, and we need to look at that and make sure it is fair and secure for everyone.
Election integrity, it's on my website. My pocket cards are back on the table. Check it out. One thing I agree with our representative, Barb Haley, is she feels that things like bus tokens and food coupons given to people that go to vote is nothing more than bribes, and I agree with her. You should want to vote. You should get informed. You should do your job. Now, there's individuals that probably don't want to vote on election day for a lot of reasons. Well, I've done this. I've walked up to the courthouse here, went inside, and I voted early. And I've had my picture ID. There's no reason why you as a citizen in the state of Minnesota should not have a picture ID. And if you don't, go to the courthouse in advance and vote. And if you're a registered voter, then you should be able to call the courthouse and ask for a ballot where you can vote by mail. Elections should be easy, voting should be easy, and I do agree, we don't want fraudulent elections. Doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Thank you.
Here in Minnesota, if you vote on the same day of the election, you walk in, you fill out your voter registration card, you put it in, and it's put into the basket with the rest of them, and it's in there. We're the only state in the country, and by the way, it's 2 or 3 weeks later before that's evaluated for the integrity of whether that's the same person or whether they live where they say they live. We're the only state in the country that has same-day voter registration, doesn't have provisional ballots. The only state. Us. I've authored in the past provisional ballots and photo ID. I'll do it again if you're elected. If you elect me and send me to the Senate, we'll have integrity then in our elections. And here's why. I was in Minneapolis in 2020 and received the video with 300 absentee ballots on the video. The guy said, these ballots are all filled out for my brother Jamal Osman, who's running for city council. That's why. It's here, and our elections are being abused. We have to make them secure again.
Thank you for the question. I'll agree that everyone wants safe and secure elections. Speaking from my experience, when I'd walk into the voting booth in my hometown, I see retired teachers, I see neighbors, I see election judges that get paid a very small amount of money and take an oath to make sure that these elections are being run fairly. And I look at that being the same case in all these little great small towns and even the bigger towns in this district. I think elections are fair, and where they're not, they should be made to be fair. But I hope we can talk about issues without trying to drive people to the fear-mongering that was earlier said and the anger in which we're addressing them. These issues can be decided fairly, and they can be decided calmly. Thank you.
Okay, we're almost at the last question, but first we're going to have a quick lightning round, yes or no response. And I'm just going to ask if we'll just start all the way down at the end with Steve and just pass the mic down. Do you think there should be term limits for the Minnesota legislative offices? Yes or no?
Yes, I've authored them in the past, I'll author them again.
Yes or no, please, just yes or no.
Yes.
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 Yes, we have some consensus.
All right, clearly I have to pick a more contentious lightning round question next time. This is actually the last question. And we're going to start with Pam, then Roger, Steve, Brad, and Laurel. A portion of the Mississippi River lies in your district, and it is a vital resource. If the river is threatened by flooding and pollution, how could the Minnesota legislature contribute to a solution?
Oh, this is a question, it's not a yes. Oh, we're back to, oh, I thought we were doing yes round, sorry. Can you repeat that? Sure.
This is just a regular question. And we'll start with Pam. A portion of the Mississippi River lies in your district, and it is a vital resource. If the river is threatened by flooding and pollution, how could the Minnesota legislature contribite to a solution?
Yeah, these are the situations that we would absolutely have to be looking for special funding. Obviously, if we're at risk of funding and this area is right here by the river, that's a huge, huge detrimental thing for this area, and it would cause a great tragedy. It would also cause long-term expenses if we didn't do something to stop it. So in that situation, we would have to work in a crisis situation, work hard and diligently, and make sure that we found a solution right away.
Pollution. I'm old enough to remember 1970 when we had, what did we call that day? It was, that senator from Wisconsin. Oh gosh, I can't even remember, but I planted a tree that day. But I also remember how filthy the rivers were, how the Mississippi was filthy, and when we started the Water Quality Act in Washington, D.C. to clean up the rivers. Today, you can go down to Max, down by, you guys know where it is, down by the power dam, Rochester. It used to be just carp and sheep's head. But we've gotten better water quality all the way from the top of Minnesota all the way down. And I would continue to say we need clean water. Our farmers, and I'm a huge proponent of livestock farming, handling the manure waste is important, so it's used on the farm and not in the rivers. And the guys that are here and the girls that are here from the farm, you already know that. That's a no-brainer. So things like that I would pay attention to. As far as flooding on the Mississippi, I was alive in 1964 when it flooded. I don't know how the Corps of Engineers could stop a flood like that, but whatever we can do, I would try to do it. Thank you.
First of all, I think we need to challenge the premise of the question. Our water quality in the river, the Mississippi River and other places is improving. And a lot of it's to the work and commitment we've done over time. Let's celebrate that and let's continue the work. And that's what we need to do, I think, in terms of water quality. In terms of flooding, I've been in office during two floods, one in 2007 in the Goodview and Stockton area, and again in 2010 in Zumbro Falls and Hammond and related areas. And we did bring forward both federal and state money and focused it on, what we have to do in that case is actually move dirt. We have to create embankment ponds up elevation that will hold back water during strong storm events like we had, very strong, 15 inches in like a few hours, and actually hold the water back up high in elevation to minimize the amount of water goes through at one time. We've done some of that. We need to continue it and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The question reminds me of the late County Commissioner Paul Drodas, who's a huge advocate for this part of the Mississippi River. You have a great attribute to your city here that water quality matters to, and that at the state level we should try to do everything we can to preserve it. If not for Paul's memory, then because it's the right thing to do. As far as flooding, when I was on the park board in 2010, I got a phone call at about 2 in the morning saying that floodwaters were approaching the waste treatment plant, so we sandbagged the whole rest of the night. When it comes time to a flood, you do what you can to help stop it, and then you clean up after it, whatever it takes. So we would do what we could at the state level, I hope. Thank you.
Yeah, we do need to continue to support water quality efforts across our state. Particularly in this district, flooding is not a hypothetical problem. It is a problem that we're facing here in the city of Red Wing and that I have faced as a city council member in my 4 years as I've served here. Many of the communities along the stretch of the river are old towns, and we have old infrastructure, including our storm sewer systems. We need to continue to support our communities as they make improvements to our stormwater systems so that they can handle the storms and the different causes of flooding in our communities, so we can continue to make those improvements. We need to do that for our businesses and our families who live in those communities so that they'll be impacted as little as possible by these events that are happening. And we also need to continue to support our communities in their water treatment plant upgrades as they continue to improve the quality of our water that goes back into the Mississippi. Thank you.
Okay, I'm now going to ask the candidates to give their closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds. We're going to start with Roger, and then Steve, Brad, Laurel, and Pam.
Again, thanks to the League of Women Voters for this forum. My number one issue is the Minnesota economy. And what's the key to a good economy, especially in Minnesota where we're located, and this is my business background, working domestically in the food and feed industry, internationally, is the simple fact that we need a better education system, and being number one is a good thing, and we should be shooting for that. And a fully funded 4-year-old preschool program, and even a 3-year-old preschool program, would help the low-level students that we're seeing in 2nd and 3rd grade advance. I've seen it. I've been in the schools. The teachers know it. The school boards know it. And you should know it too. Education is the key to a good economy. It pays for our schools when you got a better job. It pays for our roads when you got a better business. It pays for bringing businesses into the state, even if we have a high tax climate, because smart people want to live where there's smart people. They know when you've got a good education system, they're going to get good employees and it's going to help advance their companies. I've been in business, the agricultural industry, dairy industry, my whole life. And I've worked at different levels, and I can tell you, whether you're at the low level and it's bottom up, or the top level and you think it's top down, it's always bottom up. Because you got a good education at the bottom, you're going to have a better economy at the top. Thank you.
I'd like to just thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight. I'd like to thank all of you for coming and exercising your active citizenship. We have a situation, as I mentioned, the last couple of years, it's unprecedented. We have a lot of work to do. Over the last 2 years, over $81 billion has flowed into the state of Minnesota from the federal government as the printing press has rolled and is still finding its way through our economy, and largely the cause of the inflation and the economic problems that we're having. We have to, folks, stop paying people not to work. We got to restore the dignity of work in order to make our state and country the strong beacon on the hill that it used to be. And we can do that. Let's, instead of, with every problem or situation that we're encountering, instead of first looking to government and thinking government is going to provide a solution, let's look inwardly to us in our communities. Let's free up people to do the things that they can do to make their communities stronger, to make their lives stronger, more successful, to make their businesses bigger, to help their kids learn more. We can do that by bringing more freedom here to the state of Minnesota. We have to reform Chapter 12 so that never happens again. Join me. I'm asking for your vote, and together we'll make Minnesota free again.
Thanks for the question, or the chance to talk one final time. You know, when I was a kid, I grew up in the 80s, and the president was Ronald Reagan, and the Speaker of the House was Tip O'Neill. And I heard a story once that even though they'd argue like cats and dogs during the day, at night their families would have dinner together. And I always liked that story. I don't really care if it's true or not. That's how I envisioned walking into politics when I got onto the park board in 2008, when I went onto the council and was finally mayor. It's always the way I envisioned it, up until the point where you're at the VFW and the fire chief ambushes you about a pump truck. So all things going out the window then, after you get done arguing, you sit down together and you figure out a way to fund a pump truck. And that's the way government used to be, and that's the way that it should be still. People that can have differences, that can see very differently on different sides of subjects, but can still work together to get things done. And that's what I'd like to do in St. Paul. So thank you, and appreciate everyone being here tonight. I appreciate you guys hosting us, and I appreciate everyone showing up to have this great debate. So have a good night, people.
My campaign slogan has been less government, more freedom. And as running our household, you know, we have to keep in budgets. Being a businesswoman and running a large business across the United States, I've had to hire people, fire people, and I've had to make tough decisions. And right now, in the state of Minnesota, we need to hire someone that is a proven leader. We need to hire someone that is going to go there to make good choices, good changes, and use common sense. Really, we just need to get back to that. As I'm out talking to people, I'm the only person that ran in the primary. I was out door knocking hundreds and hundreds of doors. And as I'm talking to people, I have had independents and Democrats tell me that they would vote for me. And it's because of my business approach. It is because of my common sense approach. I truly believe that 80% of us believe, and we all want the same thing for our kids and for our state, and we want lower taxes. And yet we are a divided state, we are a divided nation, and that is just the extremes on both sides. So we need to have someone that can look at this in a business standpoint, to look at government is not always the answer, to look at common sense solutions, and to get our freedom back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. For me, this election is all about opportunity. I believe in the opportunity for all of the residents of District 20A to thrive. And in a rural district like ours, that might look a little different than it does in some other districts. And so we need a representative who's going to acknowledge those realities of the specific challenges that we face here in District 20A. That's why my campaign slogan is sowing the seeds of opportunity. I support our public schools so that all of our children and students will have the opportunity to learn the skills that they will need to thrive. I support our workers, I support our farmers. I want everyone to have as much opportunity as possible to build the lives that they believe are best for them. And we need to continue to support all of people in that endeavor. That's what government is for. We are the people. We need to support each other and work together and build relationships across the aisle with individuals, with organizations, to find the solutions to our problems so that everybody has the opportunity to stay in this district if this is where they want to be, and to build the life that they want. Thank you.
Okay, I hope everyone will join me in a round of applause for all of our candidates tonight. Thank you all so much. Your willingness to serve and run here is greatly appreciated, your public service for the people of the state of Minnesota. I'd also like to thank the league members who are here for their tireless work, and those who aren't here to put on these events. I'll note that we are in critical need of additional volunteers. Strangely, we don't need any funds, but we need volunteers. So if you are at all interested, well, I shouldn't say we don't need any funds, but that's not our biggest need. Please see any one of us and we can give you information about volunteering. I'd like to invite Tina Langton back on the stage for some final remarks.
Thank you, Lisa, for leading our forum this evening. Thank you again to the candidates for participating tonight, and to our co-sponsors, Red Wing Area Chamber of Commerce, Pier 55, Red Wing Area Seniors, Citizen Climate Lobby, Resilient Red Wing, American Association of University Women, and Prairie Island Indian Community. And a big thank you to you, the voters that came to spend your evening with us. Thank you. For more than 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a trusted source for nonpartisan voter registration and education, and a long-standing witness to Minnesota's proud tradition of voter access and election integrity. We invite you to visit our website, lwvmn.org, to learn about the statutes, best practices, and safeguards associated with Minnesota elections on our Election 411 page. Follow the link to Vote 411 for a one-stop shop for all your election needs, personalized to you, including a voter's guide. We hope all our candidates here tonight have submitted their information to the voter guide. The League of Women Voters is a nonprofit organization focused on grassroots voter education. We encourage active and informed participation in government and do not endorse candidates for office or political parties. The opinions expressed tonight are those of the candidates and not those of the League of Women Voters. If you are interested in learning more about the League, please stop by our information table. The forum this evening is being recorded by LWV for later broadcast. The recordings will be made available on local cable channels, the League Facebook page, our website, YouTube, and vote411.org. Vote411.org is a voter guide where you can check your voter registration, find information about your ballot and the candidates. Remember that early voting starts tomorrow, September 23rd. If you haven't registered to vote or requested an absentee ballot and would like to do so, please stop by our table.